Right before the break, we got a little John going on. Caitlin says, hey, you and me, Hayes, you and me. This is how you bring the roof down. All tied up here with 5:14 to go.
The Golden State Valkyries turned the entire game into a physical battle, constantly bumping, reaching, and throwing extra contact at Caitlin Clark from start to finish. By the final buzzer, the bruises and scratches were impossible to ignore, and even Sophie Cunningham showed the aftermath on social media after the game. But what the Valkyries didn't realize was that Indiana prepared for this exact kind of matchup all offseason. The Fever specifically targeted players who thrive in tough, gritty games. Competitors who stay calm under pressure, refuse to be intimidated, and embrace the hard-nosed work most players avoid. That's where Myisha Hines-Allen stepped in. The veteran forward brought toughness, intensity, and championship-level grit that completely flipped the energy of the game. Every time the Valkyries tried to push the limits physically, Hines-Allen answered right back and shut the whole thing down. Instead of backing Indiana off the court, Golden State ended up frustrated, rattled, and losing control of their own emotions. The enforcer the Fever added for moments exactly like this proved why she's such a dangerous weapon alongside Caitlin Clark. And if Clark keeps battling through this kind of pressure while still producing at an elite level, the MVP conversation is only going to get louder. Do you think Caitlin Clark will win MVP this season? Let me know in the comments below.
Now, take a look at this ear altercation where Caitlin Clark hit a logo bomb. I mean, absolutely hit a logo bomb all over. And then she's talking that talking cash, S-H-I-T. And you're gonna see look at Myisha Hines-Allen running to get in front of her. Don't you dare do nothing. You better fall back. You better fall back.
Right from the start, the Golden State Valkyries made it clear this wasn't going to be an easy night for Caitlin Clark. On nearly every possession, defenders stayed glued to her body, tugging at her arms, knocking her off balance around screens, and making heavy contact whenever she drove into the lane. The physicality kept escalating, but the officials allowed most of it to play on without many calls. Instead of easing up, Golden State continued pressuring Clark relentlessly from one end of the floor to the other.
Caitlin says, hey, you and me, Hayes, you and me.
York, only average 9 per game. Right up the middle, it's Tiffany Hayes.
Tiffany Hayes took the physical defense to another level all night long. Whenever Caitlin Clark tried to cut without the ball, Hayes was right there making contact, pulling at her jersey and disrupting every movement in the pick and roll game. Anytime Clark looked ready to create space or break free, the possession instantly turned into a battle for positioning. And this wasn't just a brief stretch during an intense moment of the game. It lasted the entire 40 minutes. Nearly every time Clark touched the ball, or even tried to move off it, Hayes stayed attached to her, constantly grabbing, leaning, and making the action as physical as possible instead of simply playing straight up defense.
Hayes is fouled by Clark.
That's a freedom of movement. Pre-game studio show. The Fever had to make them feel that second night so far. Haven't been able to do so. And there Clark does draw the foul.
By the time halftime arrived, the effects of the non-stop contact were easy to see on Caitlin Clark, with scratches and red marks covering her arms from all the physical play. And she wasn't the only Indiana Fever player taking a beating during the game. Sophie Cunningham dealt with the same kind of rough treatment out on the perimeter from start to finish. After the game ended, Cunningham even jumped on social media and showed the camera the scratches on her face for everyone to see. That's how intense and physical the matchup became. The contact was so excessive that players were literally documenting the damage once the game was over.
Not during the game, I came out and I literally leaned over on the bench and I was like, Ty, do I have a scratch on my head? Like, it hurts. She goes, no, you're fine. I literally looked in the mirror and I look like freaking Harry Potter.
Then just before halftime, the tension boiled over completely. During a fight for a rebound, Janelle Salan appeared to swing an elbow toward Caitlin Clark that came dangerously close to connecting. It didn't look like a normal battle for position or routine contact under the basket. It crossed into something much more heated. Clark stood her ground immediately, and within seconds, players from both sides rushed toward the situation as emotions exploded on the court. For a moment, it looked like the game was was on the verge of turning into a full-blown confrontation. Miesha Hines-Allen quickly stepped in to pull Clark away, while coaches and officials tried to restore control. After sorting through the chaos, the referees issued technical fouls to both Clark and Salon before the teams finally headed into the locker room.
Gotta make you pay with that three.
Final 5 seconds. Can Hull do it again? Not this time. And that'll take us into halftime. Well, some extracurriculars. Here is both teams head to their respective benches.
Clark's technical foul during that heated moment marked her second technical of the season, with the first coming earlier against the Los Angeles Sparks on May 13th. Then, late in the fourth quarter, things escalated again when she was assessed a flagrant 1 foul after setting a hard screen on Veronica Burton, a call that was upgraded following an official review. After the game, Caitlin Clark didn't try to downplay the situation. She joked that the night would probably cost her a few fines, along with the flagrant, estimating the total could be around $1,000. Clark openly admitted the game was extremely physical and hinted that not every bit of contact was properly called by the officials, but she avoided turning the post-game interview into a lengthy rant about the referees. Meanwhile, after the final buzzer, Tiffany Hayes was caught on a hot mic making comments that showed this matchup had become far more personal than ordinary on-court competition. It was obvious the intensity wasn't just about defense anymore. Hayes wanted Clark to hear exactly what she thought, regardless of who else might catch it.
That's it. She would never get to play the games. No questions? I'll ask.
If the refs would have made the right calls, Caitlin Clark would have destroyed you even more. They called this a foul on Caitlin Clark when she didn't even touch you. She gets elbowed, and they gave Caitlin Clark a technical, sets a screen, they give her a flagrant.
The cuts on Caitlin Clark's arms and the scratches across Sophie Cunningham's face weren't just random results of an intense matchup. That level of physicality was clearly part of Golden State's game plan from the very beginning. For a while, it worked exactly the way they wanted, until Indiana completely changed the momentum of the game, and that shift started with the exact type of tough, battle-tested player the Fever targeted all offseason to handle moments like this.
So talking about not calling stuff, how about if they actually called what they're supposed to, like 2 hands on her chest? But Caitlin Clark still improvised, made it happen for her team. How about this? That's a foul. They didn't call it. So if they would actually call what they're supposed to, Caitlin Clark would have torched you even more. Look at this. She gets hit on her elbow. For number 13, you could clearly see she doesn't have the follow through on her shot because she was hit. She's hit again.
Indiana didn't acquire Miesha Hines-Allen by chance. The Fever front office specifically searched for a player with her toughness, experience, and mentality, and games like this showed exactly why they made that move. Hines-Allen brings far more to the roster than just size and depth. She's a former WNBA champion with the Washington Mystics from 2019, has earned all WNBA recognition, and built her reputation around doing the gritty physical work that many players shy away from. She battles through contact in the paint, crashes the glass on every possession, and delivers punishing screens that defenders definitely feel. But what really separates her is the mentality she plays with. When opponents start targeting her team's star players, she doesn't hesitate or wait for permission from the sidelines. She immediately steps into the fight and changes the tone of the game herself. That kind of edge can't simply be developed during training camp. Players either naturally have it or they don't, and Hines-Allen has carried that mentality throughout her entire career.
See Miesha Hines-Allen sprint into the frame. She sprinted into the frame here. Hold on, what y'all want to do? What y'all want to do?
Indiana's biggest concern entering the offseason was never a lack of star power. The Fever already had an elite core with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, while Kelsey Mitchell had long proven she could explode offensively and carry the team when needed. Talent wasn't the issue. What kept showing up, though, was the way opponents constantly targeted Clark with relentless physical play. Night after night, teams tested Indiana's toughness because there wasn't anyone in the front court who could truly make them pay for it. Over time, opponents started treating that strategy like it came without consequences. That's exactly why the Fever went after Myisha Hines-Allen. She wasn't simply brought in as another solid addition to the roster. Indiana identified a very specific weakness and found a player built to solve it directly.
Many people noticed was Myisha Hines-Allen was not hesitant. She was sprinting front and center. Who said what? Who trying to do what? Who trying to touch 22? What you want to do? We love that. We love that because for so long we watched Caitlin Clark get targeted and get flagrantly fouled, people poking her in the eye, people knocking her to the floor when the game is not even in play, and none of her teammates would step up and defend.
Myisha Hines-Allen has built a reputation over the years as a relentless physical competitor, and she's gone toe-to-toe with some of the toughest players in the league. At one point, she even had a fiery on-court moment with Sophie Cunningham. Something that feels almost ironic now that they're on the same roster, but it perfectly captures the type of edge she plays with. Hines-Allen doesn't pick and choose who she brings that intensity against. There's no list of players she avoids or eases up on. Whoever is in front of her gets the same treatment every single time. No hesitation, no exceptions.
Sophie Cunningham tried to fight Myisha Hines-Allen. She tried to fight Myisha Hines-Allen. You do not, there are not that many people. You can see everyone else is trying to get as far away from this situation as possible. Everyone else. So she hits a three. Myisha Hines-Allen fouls her and then tries to step over. And then Sophie Cunningham grabs her leg. Nobody's going near Myisha Hines-Allen, but no, Sophie Cunningham will start the fight. The refs are trying to break it up. None of the Mercury players are going to go near Myisha Hines-Allen. They're scared. She's scared of bejesus out of them. Myisha Hines-Allen is one of the toughest players in this league. Sophie Cunningham going head to head.
The Indiana Fever designed this roster with one clear goal in mind. Give Caitlin Clark the freedom to control the offense without constantly dealing with extra physical pressure off the ball. Myisha Hines-Allen fits that plan perfectly because her toughness in the front court draws defensive attention inside and helps shift pressure away from the perimeter. That, in turn, creates cleaner post opportunities for Aaliyah Boston and gives head coach Stephanie White more flexibility to match up against the league's most physical teams without backing down. Indiana brought Hines-Allen in on a one-year deal, and that wasn't by accident. It was a calculated move that keeps the franchise's salary cap space flexible for 2026 while still putting a legitimate win-now roster on the floor. And Hines-Allen is exactly the type of player who fits that kind of structure. Her impact doesn't always show up in points or highlight plays. It shows up in the moments when the game gets rough, physical, and uncomfortable. When teams need someone to steady things and change the tone.
She's willing to do her part and protect the GOAT. That's part of the reason why we love Sophie Cunningham. And that's just a fact. Now, there was a few mix-ups here, right? And you're going to see Myisha Hines-Allen with no hesitation. I mean, with no hesitation, come and get in between and say, hey, you got to go through me to get through her.
Against Golden State, the game escalated quickly and the physical tone never really settled. When Janelle Salayun swung an elbow toward Caitlin Clark just before halftime and bodies rushed in from the sideline, Myisha Hines-Allen reacted instantly. She sprinted over, got between Clark and Salayun, and made it crystal clear that anyone trying to reach Clark would have to go through her first. Later on, when tensions flared again following the exchange involving Tiffany Hayes, Hines-Allen was right back in the middle of it, holding her ground and steadying Indiana whenever things threatened to spill over. Even with all that chaos, Clark was already putting on a ridiculous performance early. In the first quarter alone, she had a hand in 17 of Indiana's 21 points, either scoring or assisting nearly everything the Fever did offensively. That wasn't just production, it was complete control of the offense, all while dealing with constant grabbing, contact, and pressure every time she touched the ball. And despite all of Golden State's physicality, they still couldn't slow her down.
Then Holt pulls down the rebound. Lexi Holt doing it all on that defensive possession. Clark. Oh! From another stratosphere!
A little chatter too goes a long way from the logo back to defense.
The second quarter tightened up even more as Golden State's physical defense started to disrupt Caitlin Clark's rhythm. The Valkyries slowly clawed their way back into the game, and by halftime, the earlier Janelle Salayun incident was still hanging in the air while both benches remained visibly heated. During the break, head coach Stephanie White delivered a direct message: lock in defensively, increase the physicality at the point of attack, and stop allowing Golden State to get comfortable in their sets. Make them work for every single look and force tougher, contested shots. Then Clark came out for the third quarter and immediately changed the energy. She pulled up from nearly 33 feet right in front of Tiffany Hayes and buried the shot. Just like that, the game was tied at 48 and the entire arena erupted. Hayes, who had been physically aggressive with Clark all night, could only watch it drop through the net. That wasn't just a deep three, that was a statement. Pulling up from that distance over the same defender who had been hounding you all game sent a clear message, and Clark delivered it without hesitation.
Come on! You can't get enough of this. Deep and electric.
She kept the pressure on without letting up. In the third quarter, Clark repeatedly attacked the rim, absorbing contact and still finishing through it, turning what Golden State thought were solid defensive stands into three-point plays and momentum shifts for Indiana. And it wasn't just her scoring that stretched the game open. Her passing in that stretch was just as sharp, picking out cutters before the defense could even recover, feeding Aaliyah Boston inside when the paint cleared, and keeping the Fever's offense moving at a pace Golden State simply couldn't keep up with, no matter how they adjusted.
Handoff, Boston backing her way inside, kick out Hull, repost Boston. Boston turns, fades, fires and hits.
Beautifully done. Boston back to back, the repost. In the one-on-one, feels the D.
Mitchell on the attack, gets to the rim but couldn't finish. Tip out Hull, Boston's open, and she hits a three.
Aaliyah Boston anchored the paint with a dominant 20 points and 16 rebounds, and that interior control kept everything else opening up for Caitlin Clark on the perimeter. Kelsey Mitchell added 19 points of her own, and when Indiana has 3 players producing at that level, it puts opposing defenses in a constant state of panic, forcing tough decisions on nearly every possession. Raven Johnson and Lexi Hull also stepped up in the second half, knocking down timely shots that prevented Golden State from ever closing the gap enough to make the final stretch feel uncomfortable. Clark finished the night with 22 points, 9 assists, shooting 7 for 15 from the field and 4 for 9 from 3, along with a steal and a block in 32 minutes of action. She also picked up a technical foul and a flagrant one, making it clear this wasn't a perfectly clean performance by any means. Even so, she was close to her third straight game with 20 points and 10 assists despite all the physicality thrown her way. After the game, Clark told reporters the officiating felt inconsistent and suggested some of Golden State's contact should have been called earlier, though she kept her comments straightforward without turning it into a long complaint. Indiana came away with a 90-82 win, but the result meant more than just another mark in the win column. It was a clear early glimpse of what this team looks like when opponents try to overwhelm them with physical play. And the message was simple: that approach isn't working anymore.
Clark and the Indiana Fever here. First possession from Indianapolis as Mitchell gets inside and lays it in.
Let's look at what's actually different on the floor now, because it's immediately noticeable. With Myisha Hines-Allen and Sophie Cunningham working together on the wing and in the front court, Indiana has added a level of balance they simply didn't have last season. Cunningham, at her best stretch in 2025, shot around 43% from deep, which means she isn't just a corner spacer teams can ignore. She's a legitimate perimeter threat who forces defenses to stay honest every time she steps beyond the arc. On top of that, she brings a defensive edge that makes every matchup feel physical and uncomfortable for whoever she's guarding.
You want to talk to her, you got to talk to me. This is what we needed on this team. Somebody that's willing to be front and center, and that's with all the smoke. That's with all the smoke, okay? Just like Sophie Cunningham was right here. Oh, you want to, yep, sit down. Yep. This is why we love Sophie. This is why we love Sophie. Never forget, and Myisha Hines-Allen is down for the same cause. Make no mistake about it, Myisha Hines-Allen is down.
Then you have Hines-Allen handling the interior toughness and physical enforcement role. She absorbs contact, sets the tone inside, and brings a level of resistance that changes how teams approach the paint. Together, they completely change the dynamic around Caitlin Clark. What used to be a single-point focus for opposing defenses is no longer possible. Now, if teams try to pressure Clark, they have to account for two forwards who can respond in very different ways and make them pay for it either inside or on the perimeter.
Quite a bit of foul trouble in this half. To put it into perspective, Mabry has 3, Sanaya Rivers has 3 fouls, Bria Hartley has 3 fouls.
That's your wing depth.
Ugh.
The real change with this Indiana team isn't just physical, it's mental. Over the last 2 seasons, Caitlin Clark often had to spend extra focus dealing with constant pressure and off-ball contact because there wasn't always someone stepping in to absorb that burden for her. And when you're also running an entire offense, reading coverages, and closing games, that extra load matters more than people realize. Now, with Myisha Hines-Allen in the mix, those situations are handled before they even escalate. She moves toward the physical matchup immediately, taking that responsibility off Clark's plate and shifting the entire dynamic of how Indiana operates. That change is huge. It allows Clark to put all of her attention back into what she does best: controlling the game, creating offense, and staying locked in on every possession. And when she's fully focused, surrounded by a balanced, connected roster that's building chemistry, she becomes a problem the rest of the league has to seriously account for. That's where the MVP talk starts to feel real, especially if Indiana keeps stacking wins like this. Even in a game where she took heavy contact, scratches, fouls, and physical pressure all night, Clark was still on track for another 20-point, 10-assist performance, nearly her 3rd straight. That level of output doesn't require perfect conditions. And looking ahead, the road to a championship in 2026 is going to include exactly these kinds of games. Physical, emotional, and tightly contested from the opening tip. Indiana just showed they can handle that environment. Golden State, on the other hand, showed they couldn't break their focus no matter how physical it got. Do you think Caitlin Clark will win MVP this season? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any basketball updates. And click the video on screen. We'll see you in the next one.